Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Project Flux Spotlight Series. And today we've got something a bit different actually. We have Tom Esch, who's a communications consultant. He's going to tell us more about his company later. But we're not really going to talk about AI today. What we're actually going to talk about is one of the most valuable skills that we're going to need more than ever going into the AI age, which is human skills. So Tom, thank you so much for coming on and, giving us something very different to talk about this week.
You're welcome. Happy to connect with you guys from across the pond here.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you on. And actually, we were recommended you by another previous guest of the podcast, William Christensen, who says, you've got to talk to Tom. You've got to talk to Tom. So we had a preliminary chat and we hit it off straight away. And we've been really looking forward to this one for quite some time now.
Yeah, excellent.
Cool. So I always start by just asking people, particularly with a mind to what's happening in tech and AI, what's kind of on your mind at the moment? Are you thinking a lot about what AI is going to do to society as a whole? Is there anything in particular you're thinking about a lot at the moment?
I am not an early adopter, James and Yoshi. I'm a late adopter, so I do not spend a lot of time. But because of Will Christensen, who's brilliant with AI, as you might know, from my point of view, as a Luddite, I'm basically a backwards Luddite to AI, though Will has pulled me along. And I have now seen the light. It's happening. And am I a little nervous? I am a little nervous about AI. And I probably think about it more than I'll admit to anyone. And what I think about is how we can lose some of our creative juice with AI. It's already replaced things. It's going to replace a lot more things. That there is a danger of losing our juice. I have a good friend who's a similar business to mine. He's a communication expert in construction. He helps companies win projects, win over $14 billion, him and his company, for construction companies vying for important business. He's a brilliant thinker. He's a hard skill, soft skill guy. And he's starting to use AI quite a bit. And he's been telling me AI is now the best coach he's ever hired. He's spending about $50 a month with a special AI app that he uses. And he's writing a book, and the AI now helping him write the book. And he said it's the best coach. And of course, he's downloaded, hundreds and hundreds of documents and things that he's written and thought about and talked about. So the AI person, the AI machine knows him very well, speaks to him in his language, uses profanity. And he says it's the best coach he's ever had. Yeah, I said, why would you ever hire another coach? Or why would you ever even have a friend? And I'm sort of challenging him, and I don't like his answer so far, because I think there's a danger of him getting more isolated and gaining some creative juice from this AI, but also losing some.
Yeah, that's why I'm so glad we got you on, because we hear, as you can imagine, we get a lot of AI experts on Luddites, as you kind of called yourself. But I think that's a good thing, because we want to hear your story. You say you're coming along to it now after initially being skeptical, but then coming along with that, what I call healthy skepticism, is really important. So what you just mentioned that, you're coming along now, you've spoken to Will, and you're kind of on the bus now. What made you change your mind? Is there anything in particular?
Well, and Will's not the only one, and my friend Dean isn't the only one. I probably, my brother is one. I have probably 4 people I respect in my ear saying, you've got to get with it. My son, who's this brilliant online kid, Dad, you got to get with it, man. AI it's huge. So, as a trainer and a coach and a presenter, I'm creating material, developing material, and I will plug in a question, and I've been pleasantly surprised with what AI can do. And I'm also using Fathom now. Pretty much all of my Zoom coaching and some of my trainings and webinars I'm recording. It goes right into the Fathom, as you guys know, as well as anyone, and then it summarizes the notes. So oftentimes I will just send that, with their permission, of course, to my client. And it summarizes the homework at the top. Your homework this week is to do these 3 things. It's hard to say no to some of that efficiency. So the efficiency, and I said it takes away some of the creativity. It also can add some, but I'm afraid it will make us all kind of dumb, the way that many of us have forgotten to memorize telephone numbers. My father started a business back in the 60s. And at one point, he had over 200 telephone numbers memorized. He didn't have anything written down, and he knew 200 telephone numbers. Who do you know right now who knows 200 telephone
That's
numbers.
so true. I remember knowing all my friends' telephone numbers off by heart. In fact, I
That's
can
right.
still remember my home's telephone number. I don't think my kids would have any idea even what their own mobile number is now, because you just, you just send it, or you Bluetooth it, or whatever you do to get it across. It's really,
Well,
really interesting.
and we don't know yet what the cost of that is. You could say no big
Mm.
deal. You don't need it. But I think there are going to be some hidden costs to some of this that you can't even predict, right?
Yeah,
And that is,
absolutely.
and that's some of the arguments, though. Some of the arguments is that, well, with AI, you don't have to remember everything, but there are things that you can do better. And one dimension of that where humans still excel, Tom, is in the, I guess what they say, softer skills, the communication, the emotional intelligence, and the things which help you to connect with other people. Can you just introduce kind of your ethos around this space?
Sure, it's a good question. Yeah, I'm a former clergyman, which you may or may not know. I think you guys know. I'm
You
a
did tell us. I was waiting for
Yeah.
you to
Former
bring that
Catholic
in.
priest. My joke between me and God is that I passed preaching, but I flunked celibacy, and that's a required class and nothing illegal, you have to say nowadays. There, deep in me, there's a priest, there's a minister that really cares for people and that believes part of my role is to kind of be a bridge between the divine and the human, whatever that means, some kind of a way that people can communicate more easily, create better relationships, create better community. I dream of my work contributing in a very small way to a better world. I work mostly with tough guys in construction, helping them be more human, helping them relate to others. I just got off the phone with a client in Wisconsin here in the Midwest who's struggling with a foreman on a big Amazon job, who's barking at people and biting heads off and treating people poorly. And the owner needs to know how to handle this guy. And of course, it's his top producing guy. It's his most skilled employee who is acting like a Neanderthal. And not that many years ago, one of his employees took his own life by suicide on a job. And I can imagine that a barking boss might not help that. Now, I don't know that whole situation, but you can imagine a hostile work environment doesn't help your mental health.
Definitely not.
So my ethos is really around helping create a healthier world and mostly working with men in construction, kind of the tough guy world, which is a really unique niche for a former priest to have landed in. And I still don't know how it happened, but here I am.
Yeah, that is a strange path, but like they say, you've got
Strange.
unique abilities, obviously.
Thank you.
What drew you that way, Tom?
Well, my grandfather started a supply company in the 90s, and my father inherited it. My uncle then took it over from my father, and my brother then bought it from my uncle under a new name. And they were mostly selling diamond tip saw blades. And I got into the business after being a priest. What do you do? It's hard to know what to do. And the job was there, and we had our new baby and the new house, and I needed money. And I thought, well, I'll go sell supplies. You know, Jesus was a carpenter, so maybe construction supplies is
Yeah,
kind
makes
of
sense.
close. I stretched it a little bit, but I found I enjoyed some parts of it, and other parts sucked my soul dry. And that's when I got my first master's is from a school called the University of Notre Dame over here. You might have heard of it. We have a
Yeah.
well-known football team and a golden dome. So, what do? You do sell supplies, and that's what I did for 10 years till I about, really got very frustrated that there wasn't more meaning to it. So I got a second master's in conflict resolution and organizational change work and a lot of different coaching. I have a certificate in mediation. So I got more into the people stuff. So I was deep in the supply world, and my family is well known here in Minnesota and the Twin Cities as suppliers of tools to the tough guys. So it's been a nice niche to be in because a lot of people know my name or they know me, and that's helpful. That's kind of how I landed in it, by happy accident. And I'm not going to tell you it's been easy. It is not an easy niche to be in.
No, and going that direction is incredible. But going back to so obviously you're a very spiritual person coming from that priesthood side of things. So what do you, going back to AI, what's your view on, because there's a lot of debate around, is AI going to become sentient? Has it got consciousness? What's your view on what AI could do to spirituality and people's place in the world and their meaning and how they find meaning?
It's very interesting. I think it can actually add a lot, and I think it will. I've already heard stories, and maybe you can correct me, but I hear stories that especially people who are older, who might have lost a spouse, who are savvy enough to work with computers still, are downloading information, including recordings of their spouse's voice, and they're recreating their spouse. Have you heard of some of this? Is there a
I
name for
have.
that? Is there a
I,
name for that thing?
it's cloning effectively of voices and
Technical
creating
cloning or something? Yeah.
So
digital twin of that person.
Digital
Exactly.
twin of that person. I think it's interesting. I'm fairly broad-minded now when it comes to spirituality, though I started Catholic, and you might say the Catholic world is a little bit narrow or very specific with the rules, right?
Yeah.
The Romans weren't exactly flying loose and free with the rules and requirements, and so that's my original shaping. I've moved a lot since those days. I think whatever helps people connect to their deepest, best self, connect to the created world, and connect to other people in healthy ways is a positive part of spirituality. Is AI going to be a part of that? It just might be. I mean, we hear about the dark sides of AI all the time. I don't hear a lot about the bright sides, but what you just mentioned is very interesting. When my friend Dean, who I deeply respect, tells me the best coach he's ever hired is AI and becoming a kind of friend. By the way, he caught AI lying the other day, he told me. He
Oh
should
yeah.
really be a guest on your show. He's a phenomenal guy. He's a Hollywood guy who trained CIA agents how to manage their emotions if and when they're kidnapped in order to survive.
wow.
So
Cool.
he's
Wow.
a guy you should consider. His name is
Definitely.
Dean Hires. I'll just name him right there. He won't care that I'm naming him at
Hey,
all. But
that's how we get our best guests. That's how we got you, Tom. We always get it through recommendations.
he's a really interesting bird, and he caught his AI lying recently. The AI promised him it could help him write the book, promised it could develop this fancy flyer, and he was doing all this high-end stuff. And then it took several days, and he finally said, "You're not going to do it, are you? You can't do this, can you?" And the AI, he said, "You've lied to me. I think you're lying to me." And the AI said, "No, no, I'm not lying. I just underestimated my ability."
Yeah.
And so they had a whole debate, but he will tell you that he
Well,
really believes he
it's
caught.
interesting because they do. I mean, it's called hallucinations, and because at the end of the day, all it's doing, a lot of these AI tools, especially the large language models, which I assume he was using, is it's just predicting the next word, and it always wants to give an answer. It will never say, "I don't know" or "I can't." It will always give an answer, even if that answer is just making stuff up. So that's
Yes.
probably what you got caught with, and it is a
I,
massive inherent flaw. And I spend a lot of time talking about it in the newsletter. Especially when people say, "Is this an algorithm or not?" Well, that's the best proof that it is, because it is literally just, the dog. It will then be able to say the dog barks, because that's the obvious next word. It's as simple as that in terms of the pre-training models. Obviously, some of the new models are working slightly differently, particularly the inference models, Yoshi. But
Mm.
that's basically the crux of it. So yeah, you do have to be very, very careful. And it's interesting that you got that case study there.
but yeah, go
And
ahead, Josh.
there's a rabbit hole here as well, because Tom, you work in communication and you appreciate that human connection is really important for us
Hmm.
to be able to navigate the world together and just be able to create value between humans.
Hmm.
Now, I find it interesting that when people say AI is conscious, right, or there's a level of sentience, it
Hmm.
means that an AI will understand what it's like to be. It will have a subjective experience. And in that, there needs to be a level of balance, right? In the sense that it should be able to feel pain and it should be able to feel pleasure to some extent.
Hmm.
Now, when you communicate with someone as a person, they are likely to listen to you, understand you, engage with you through their emotion. But in this, if we take the idea that an AI doesn't have consciousness, right?
Hmm.
How limited is it in helping with communication? Because it doesn't have that connection. It can just tell you how to think through things logically, but it can't tell you how to feel, right? Because it can't empathize.
AI can't empathize?
I don't think it can empathize with that. I don't think it would understand the meaning of empathy. I
It
think
can give the impression that it emphasizes, but it's not actually emphasized, because that's something you feel. It's hot. How do you program an AI to feel? It can pretend it does.
so. On
And
that
this is the
basis,
rabbit hole.
how much can it really help you if it doesn't really have an understanding of empathy?
Well, the impression of empathy is better than what some people can deliver,
That's so true.
for one thing.
Yeah.
But you guys have both thought much deeper than I have about the sentience of AI and the consciousness of AI and maybe the spirituality of AI. I agree it is very limited, that there's nothing that replaces a human being truly empathizing with you and being with you in physical form. All right. That's another
Yeah.
part. I don't know if AI has any physicality yet, but all I see is my computer screen. That's all I ever see. AI is just words on my computer. So yeah, obviously there are huge shortcomings, but I think the impression of empathy in the tough guy worlds in which I work is pretty good. Like
Yeah.
if somebody was on some project all alone and they didn't have a friend there, but AI was helping them feel heard at the end of the day, and they were logging on to get empathy from AI. If that helped them live their life, who am I to say that's a bad idea?
Yeah.
Unless they get dependent on it. Like I'm
Mm.
challenging my friend Dean. I said, why would you ever talk to another friend or another coach friend? I'm a bit of a coach friend to him. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm going to lose to A. He doesn't even pay me necessarily, but I've sort of lost my time coaching with him because AI is his best coach.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can we just talk about then? I mean, one of the big things we're starting to go into is the human side of AI. So one of the things or the themes that are starting to be repeated on the podcast is people saying, right, well, AI is going to do a lot of the grunt work. It's going to do a lot of the boring tasks that people don't really want to do anyway. But the one thing it's never going to be able to replace is the human skills. And with that, I mean emotional intelligence, empathy. Well, we just talked about empathy,
Mm-hmm.
communication skills, which is something that you coach, isn't it? Isn't it, Tom?
Yes.
So, especially in this tough guy world, and a lot of people listening to this podcast will be from the construction sector or the infrastructure sector. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you agree with that? Do you agree that human skills are going to become more important than ever in this new AI world?
100%. And the digital age that I watched my son, who's 24, who's in so deeply and so connected to their phones and to the digital world. We know this, and there's been
Mm.
studies. They have lost some of the natural human ability to relate and to talk with people and to even
Can you
make a
give me some
phone call.
examples? What
Making
sort
a
of things have
phone
they
call.
lost?
Like my son had one of his best friends over about a year ago, and this 23-year-old young man didn't have a job, and he needed a job. Very sharp kid. These kids went to a very fine high school. Smart kid. He's happens to be Asian. He's Hmong, and in Minnesota there's 25,000 plus people who are identified as Hmong, mostly from Laos, right here in my state. And he's one of them. Smart kid, confident kid, but shy about using his phone to call
Mm,
anyone. He texts
mm,
people all day long,
Mm.
but he wouldn't make a phone call. I said, my friend Brian, who owns a kombucha company here in Minneapolis, is hiring. You guys know what you drink kombucha over there
Yeah, it's
in
available here.
the UK? You drink a little kombucha.
I can't say I've ever had it, but Yoshi's your
Okay,
expert.
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
used to.
it's. I love the drink. It's supposed to be healthy. I said he's
Mm.
hiring right now, and you could help him grow his product in the Hmong community here. It
Mm,
would fit well with some of the Asian sensibility around probiotic foods,
Mm.
kimchi, and other things like that. And he would not make the call. I worked on him for almost 40 minutes. 40 minutes it took me to get him to make one. I said, I know he's hiring. I know he's at his phone. He's a very good friend of mine. I said, you could text him, but calling is better. I think he texted him first, but he eventually talked to him on the phone and did make a phone call and got the job, got hired the next day.
he did it. He did it. You got him to do
He
it.
did it. I worked on him
Hey.
for 40 minutes. I'm telling you, it took me 40 minutes to break through this kid's resistance to have a phone call.
But what was the issue? Was he just shy, or did he not know how to make a call? What was the issue?
I didn't ask him, but I have some guesses. They're just not in the habit of doing it. And they're shy about calling an older person, making a business call. It's not their habit. He was a little shy. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
just nervous about it, about making calls. Some of these young people have social anxiety. Even
Mm.
my kid has told me sometimes, Dad, I get anxious when I have to make a phone call. I get very anxious. There's an
But
anxiety that goes with it.
I think everyone, especially more introverted people, have that kind of anxiety. But the difference is, years ago, you had no choice but to kind of work on that skill
Yes,
because it was the only way to communicate. But now there's so many other ways to communicate,
yes,
and
that's
I've
right.
seen my kids do it. I mean, I've seen my two kids text each other when they're in the next room to each other.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
or sitting in the same circle, they will text each other. So yeah, that's just. But these kids are using AI. They're using all kinds of digital communication I don't even know about, and that's natural to them. That's their first language. So this
Yeah.
is calling is like a third or fourth. That'd be like me calling you in Swahili.
But that's why I think it's so important that these skills are going to, because it's going to be the differentiator in a world where everyone's got access to super powerful general AI. So effectively knowledge and information has become democratized. Then what's going to stand one person out from the other? It will be the way that they can communicate. It will be the person that can make that call. It will be the person that can have that emotional intelligence and see when somebody's struggling. I think that's something really sorely missing at the moment, particularly in the younger world.
Yeah, and interestingly
Absolutely.
now, there's some AI tools that have come out which allow you to speak to people face to face. And when you hear a response, the AI can process in real time and then tell you what to say back. Now, so the plus side of it is that it allows you to explore different avenues of conversation. The limitation of it is that with a lot of existing models, which were traditionally built on text, is that communication is more than just text, right? It's like the whole thing about who you are. Are you the person who those little facial expressions you make when someone speaks to you? Those little facial expressions you can't really communicate via text. So as these models get stronger, they become better, but there are always going to be those intangibles, those little subtle movements in someone's eyebrows, are a big indicator of if someone's listening to you, if they actually believe what you're saying. And that's something that an AI can't pick up yet.
Well, now you make me wonder how much the communication studies are off because in 1968, a fellow named Albert Mehrabian studied communication and he decided, and other studies are similar, you've probably heard of this, that 55% of human communication is body language.
Mhm.
And 38%, I think it is 38%, is tone of voice. And the actual words are just 7%. And there's been other similar numbers, similar studies. And most people who understand communication think, yep, 7%. But I'll bet that's different now with all the digital communication happening. That can't be true, but there's still something fundamentally human about the body language and the tone of voice. And it all comes down to our brains, guys. You probably know this. Our
Yeah,
brains are
100%.
constantly reading the environment for threats. To what?
Mhm.
Our survival. Our brains are an amazing computer aimed at keeping the body alive. In fact, they're so good at it, they're too good at it. So if you get a text from your boss and he says, show up to my office right now, show up. Of course, I'm giving that a tone of voice. You don't know the tone. You just see, show up in my office right now. Do you think you're getting a trip to the south of Italy? Are you going to Naples? You're going to see
You'll
Rome
start
and Venice?
catastrophizing, won't you? You'll start
The
catastrophizing
brain,
it.
the brain goes straight to the threat because the trip to Naples won't kill you, but getting fired and losing your income and being homeless could kill you.
Mm.
So the brain goes straight to the threat, and the brain is hyperactive. Now, I don't know how all this is going to be impacted by it, but right now the brain is designed to detect threats, and we're scanning the environment. And in human communication, we decide within a few seconds if somebody is safe to talk with, right? One of the first things, are you safe? And then one of the second things we do is, are you valuable to me? Within 10 or 20 seconds, you've established if the person is safe, if your brain thinks they're safe, and then if you think they'll bring you value, or ideally you'd bring them also value, how is that going to be impacted by AI? I don't know.
Yeah, and this impact also, you can also take to rhetoric. So a lot of websites now, I think there was a study out recently which showed that it's actually more worth you designing things like your website and online material for a large language model as opposed to it being designed for a human. Because with the adoption of AI and with the adoption of large language models, which can connect to the web and pull information, it's not actually going to be you who's pulling the information. You might not ever visit a site. You might just use ChatGPT and it provides you the source with the information. So people are designing their websites, their communication material for AI, not for people. So there's going to be a difference in dynamic between how we, especially within the text modality, in terms of how we consume information and how rhetoric plays out.
Well, that's interesting. I
Yeah,
don't
so
even know how to
basically,
design it. I don't even know how to design it for people to find my website. How am I going to design it for AI to find my website?
it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because the whole internet is going to become, AI first, effectively. It's
Yes,
going to be,
yes.
so even though we've had 30 years or whatever of an internet, which is being read by people, I think things are going to change quite markedly. But somehow I still feel that nothing's going to quite replace you. You mentioned earlier, Tom, about, AI is actually on my computer screen. Well, I mean, that's already starting to move, because the humanoid robots that are being developed, they're obviously AI powered. Within a few years, at most 10 years, you're going to have, humanoid robots on construction sites doing stuff and being able to have conversations with you. Now, I'm not sure if at that point you'll have AI that can detect those little ticks that Yoshi talked about, the ones I noticed when he's getting bored of me and I could see him switching off.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are really important though. But I wonder if, AI is going to get so advanced, it's even going to be able to start detecting, your tone of voice, or, the
Sure.
expression on your face, so that it can say whatever it's saying, it can detect that, you're getting bored, or the answer might not be quite right. In some respects, it's already doing that. I mean, I've conversing with ChatGPT. Sometimes it can actually come back to you. I've had experiences where it said, you appear to be dissatisfied, or something like that. I don't know if you've had the same experience, Yoshi, but it's already starting to become a little bit. Obviously, this is just programming, and it's being told that there's certain things that it needs to look out for. But I don't think it'll be too long before we have humanoid robots powered by AI that is able to detect some kind of human emotion.
I think you're right. But I also think you're totally right that for how many decades or hundreds of years or forever will it be more important to have a human, especially anytime there's a team of people. If your company is just individuals sitting in call centers, or, in China or the Philippines doing your work, is AI more favorable to that? But if your company is 115 people out building a building in the middle of Wisconsin or here in Minnesota, you better have people that are skilled with human communication, who can tell when somebody is tired, who can tell when somebody is sick, who can tell when somebody's really irritated, who can pick up on nonverbals and tone of voice, and have the crucial conversations. AI, I'm sure, can have a crucial conversation. I'm quite sure it could, but it just will never be the same. That intangible element of human community or of human connection, I doubt that'll ever fully be replaced. But I also can imagine it will come close in many ways. And I actually think that's a hazard, because I think we're already so isolated. That's the part I don't like about AI, is if AI really achieves a high level of interaction, including emotional intelligence and having crucial conversations and showing that great empathy, then there's more reason to become isolated. And I don't like that. I don't think that's a great direction for humanity.
Yeah,
More
it's a real,
isolation.
we are at a sort of tipping point. It's going to be really interesting to see how it goes down. And obviously, we're proponents of AI, because that's why we do the podcast. But also,
Yeah.
part of the reason we do the podcast is to look at the dangers. And this is a very real danger, that we're going to go down a path that will be very difficult to come back from. Just moving on to your kind of background with sort of conflict resolution, stuff like that. I mean, that's a really important part of particularly construction, right? A lot
Yeah.
of conflicts in construction, for instance,
Yes.
happen through misunderstanding, and because there's sometimes a lot of macho kind of ego at stake. I've spoken to a few contractors here in the UK who said that they've started to use AI to help with conflict. Like, for instance, just by reading say that a contractor's put a claim in, it can help someone sort of decipher what that claim is and give a person advice about best way to approach it. At the end of the day, I always feel that most conflicts in construction happen because of some kind of misunderstanding, or because of some kind of ego involved. Would you say that's the same in the States as well? Or do you say these conflicts are a result of something different?
I think those are two reasons. Misunderstanding of communication is super common. Ego is always present on every job I've seen. But I also think there are other things operating. People have different belief systems. People come in with different styles for how they approach something. I just did the Myers-Briggs. Have you heard of the
Yes,
Myers-Briggs?
yeah, the
World's
personality
best
test.
known personality profile, pretty much. Did that for a company with their 32 of their top leaders last Friday. And sometimes that's enough, right? Somebody's an introvert and someone's an extrovert, and someone's a thinker, and the other one is a feeler. And they have very different approaches. So, and that is part, I guess that's part of the communication, but it's also base it more in the style, the preference by which you communicate, not just the words. And then I also think there's a topic that's not talked about enough, and that's rank. And you said ego, and it doesn't always equate with ego at all. I see rank as a component of power. And if we define power as the ability to cause or prevent a change, which is one of my definitions I love, that's Rollo May, is the ability to cause or prevent a change, then
Love that.
rank is the way that power gets structured in organizations and within an individual. And that's another dynamic that's a source of trouble and conflict in construction. And that's the way rank is used or misused. It's very easy to misuse rank. When somebody has high rank, we tend to minimize the needs and feelings of others. Unless you're really aware and unless you've not forgotten your own suffering and your own times in your life where you were not highly ranked. But people get highly ranked, they tend to forget those times and they tend to pull rank or misuse their rank. And that's another reason, I think, for some of the trouble we're talking about, James.
Is it also because when somebody reaches that level, they kind of only see with rose-tinted spectacles the way that they dealt with things? So kind of like, well, I just got on and did it when I was in your position, and they forgot about the times, like you said, they were anxious or they made them feel very, very difficult, and they look at it with just from that lens.
That's right. They've forgotten their own suffering. They've minimized their own difficulty, and they believe it's better if you suffer and do it the same way that they did it. And there's a lot of tension between the older generations and the new young guys coming up who don't want to do it the difficult way. They'd rather use AI or ChatGPT or whatever to get the easy answer, to be more efficient, And the old school guys are like, no, you got to do it the way I did it. There's a lot of that in construction.
So where do you turn to first, Tom, as a solution for that when you see a discrepancy?
Which discrepancy on which point?
When you see the older generations who want to do things a certain way, and then you have a younger generation who do things in a different way, but they can pull rank because the more traditional guys will typically be more senior.
It's a really tricky one. If the owner is of an older generation and yet progressive enough to see what's going on and to know that that's a real threat to his or her business, which it is, because the young people will leave. The young people won't stay around.
Yeah,
the baby boomers can get yelled at and stay around, but the young people under 30, they get yelled at once or twice. They're going to go do DoorDash, like my son, $30 an hour. And so I want to start with the owner or the leader if they're progressive minded. If the top people are not progressive minded, it's a lost cause, Yoshi. I'm not even going to try, because that is a really tough battle, because most of the old school guys are not going to change much at all, if at all. And that navigation of that conflict is tricky. I mean, if the owner wants to use his or her rank strongly and say, you can't yell anymore, and here's some support and resources for you to help deal with your way of communicating. And they've brought me in to coach people plenty of times. Can you fix that guy? He yells a lot. Can you fix him? I say, no, I probably can't fix him, but I'll interview him. I'll talk with him, and I'll give you my honest opinion on whether he's coachable and whether or not you have the backbone to do what you need to do.
It's interesting that you say there's some people that just aren't coachable, that a lost cause, I think is the word you use. And I think that's really interesting, because especially with the workplace is going to change significantly over the next sort of 5 to 10 years. And it's going to be hard enough for a lot of these traditional firms to keep up. But if they're close their minds and people don't feel like they're able to approach them with innovative new ideas, they're going to be the first ones to suffer more than ever from the job displacement that's coming, I think.
Yes.
So what makes a workplace, like, it doesn't matter whether it's now or let's say in 5 years' time when, everyone's got 15 agents working, AI agents working for them. Is there something that makes a workplace psychologically safe?
Absolutely. Several things make a workplace safe, and that would be a high level of trust, leaders of integrity, leaders who, when they make mistakes, clean up their messes, which contributes to trust, a workplace that feels physically and psychologically safe. Some of our workplaces don't feel physically safe. Some of our construction sites, fewer and fewer, I will say, from 10, 20, 30 years ago, when I first started, feels unsafe. My kid's on this landscaping job. He doesn't really know the trades. He has not done a lot of physical labor. and he was setting a 300-pound beam with a big rubber sledgehammer, and he hammered it, and it fell into place so hard it hit him in the side. Could have knocked him off the bucket. He was 15 feet in the air. Could have knocked him out of the bucket. That would have been a very serious injury. So somebody didn't train him enough to know, all right, Eli, when you hit that 300-pound beam, it's going to fall quickly 2 feet. Make sure you're not standing there, right? No one trained him in. But he says they have a good safety record, says they're committed to safety. So these things, all these things contribute to safety, physical safety. Psychological safety is really about how people treat each other. And the leaders set the bar for that, obviously. And the leaders, by their conduct, by what they say and don't say, by how they communicate, and in the trades, which is my world, using your volume and your rank with awareness and carefully. Right? You get a big, large guy yelling at people. That is an unsafe environment to almost any brain. And they might look tough or they might not react, but the brain is wired to detect that. You can begin to unwire that, but you're going to need about 40 years of meditation to do that.
Yeah. What would you say then to, because we get some leaders who might be skeptics, AI skeptics, and maybe they're yellers as well. What would you say to those people listening in, how they might be able to prepare themselves for what's going to be a very different workplace in the next few years? How can they prepare themselves?
For AI or for?
Well, for AI, or the not specific, more the changes to the workplace that AI is going to bring, i.e. it's going to become less and less acceptable to be that person that yells, because people can have so many more choices in terms of what to do now. So how do they protect their business? Because normally they may be the owner. How do they protect their business by changing the way that they make their workplace psychologically safe?
I think some of the best things that they can do are develop their own self to grow their own leadership potential, meaning do some coaching, do some reading, spend time there's a lot of good peer learning happening in the States. I'm sure it's the same in the UK.
Yeah.
Lots of executives and owners going to these various peer learning groups, usually once a month, half a day or a full day. Vistage is a big one here. Do you have Vistage over there in the UK?
Never heard of that.
I'd be surprised if you don't, because it's around the world, but from my point of view, it's an expensive kind of learning and development. I think that's one of the places people need to go, because in those places, they're bringing in people like you and me to educate them about how to manage what's coming, because many of them are going to be blindsided. And I appreciate your focus on this, because I haven't thought about it enough, that AI is definitely changing things quickly, that leaders need to be ready to prepare their people. And I would say it just ups the urgency for everyone to have better communication skills. And if you have people that you say are high performers, but they still yell at people, they're not high performers anymore.
No, I agree.
Change the name. You can't call them a high performer. They're a threat to your business. And you need to either get them, if they want to change. I'm not saying it's impossible, but if somebody has that kind of behavior and they're well paid and they're seasoned and the owner loves them, they're going to have like a car crash and cancer, and their wife's going to have to leave them. Their child's going to have to, break both legs for them to begin to wake up to the world that they're in. That's one way people can wake up to awareness and make some changes, or get cancer. One of my clients has cancer and he's dying. Yeah. He's a different guy than he was 3 years ago, because he's dying. He's open, and that can open somebody up to developing themselves enough to have an impact on other people. And then, of course, obviously training, bring in coaches, bring in trainers, bring in support to create a psychologically safer, stronger workforce with better communication, better processes too. We haven't talked a lot about when you communicate better, soft skills and emotionally, you also still have to have great communication processes. And I also talk about that. Because if you have horrible processes but really skilled communicators, you could still have a disaster of a business. So, right?
There's a lot to unpick there. It sounds like we need a follow-up episode, because I think we're just getting started. But it's such an important point, because we talk so much about the technical parts of AI, and this is probably the first time we've really spoken to somebody about the psychological, what it's going to mean psychologically, and I think that's going to become more and more important. And I in the talks that I do, I've noticed that as well, like looking at people's approaches. There was quite an interesting thing that happened over the course of the last week for me, where I saw two different approaches to the very similar question, where there was one boss, and this is the kind of the different approaches to what people think about AI. One boss, we'll call him a boss of a company, said to their employee, "Did you use AI for that?" And then the person said, yeah, I used AI to help it. And he was made to feel embarrassed, made to feel as if he was cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that person's ever going to use it again or admit to using it? No. Then the second example was another boss of a company saying to a person, "Did you use AI to do that?" And the person was like, "Oh, well, I used it to help." And his approach was, "Well, why aren't you using it more? I'm paying you. I don't want you doing stuff yourself or stuff that AI could do." So what's his reaction going to be? It's going to be he's going to feel psychologically safe to use it more. Yes. And I think the difference between those two bosses over the course of the next 10 years is going to be really interesting, because one of them's going to be able to start stacking and making their people more productive. The other one is going to really, really struggle. So this is I just thought really interesting real life case study there.
Yeah, that's a really interesting case study there. The public shaming is pretty powerful, and in a negative way mostly. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore.
No, it doesn't. I think things are changing.
It doesn't work.
Listen, Tom, I can't believe we're already near the end of the podcast. I got sort of one more question for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Kind of just going back to you, because you're such an interesting character, the things that you've done. So what's something completely outside your field that's fascinating you right now? Is there another thing that you're interested in that you'd like to share?
Completely outside my world. Well, I garden.
Yeah?
I don't know if gardening, that's
definitely outside the AI world, definitely.
Gardening and meditation, one of your questions you sent me was what grounds me, or how do I generate my own well-being. And gardening, meditation are two things that I do to sort of ground myself in the earth and ground myself in my spirit and in my heart by just taking time to pay attention to my breath, open my heart. And when I'm gardening, digging in the dirt, there's something about digging in dirt and growing plants and then eating the plants. I do the vegetables. My wife does the flowers, and we grow lots of, actually, I just planted some English cucumbers recently, those long ones.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Love those.
I can totally connect to the meditation. I've been meditating for nearly 20 years, and it's
yes.
I couldn't imagine life without it. So if anyone's struggling with anxiety, there's so many different types out there, but it really is the greatest thing.
Yes.
So, Tom, is there where can people find out more about you and your company if they wanted to look you up? I know you're on LinkedIn, but is anyone else?
LinkedIn is the best. Just Tom Esch, ESCH. There's not too many of us out there. You'll see it probably with my orange and blue. And then my website, eschconsulting.com, ESCH consulting.com. You can reach me, email me there, or just tom@eschconsulting.com, also my email.
Fantastic. We'll put all of that in the show notes as well, so people can just click through to it. Tom, all I can say is, we could have easily gone on for a lot longer, but we do try and keep this to kind of the average commute time, which is why we've got 45 minutes. So thank you so much. Is there any kind of final words you want to say to our listeners?
No, I appreciate your attention to wanting AI to be a useful tool for humanity. I can sense your intent to have this AI help us all and help our world and help us relate. And I value that. So I appreciate that. And I'm really glad you made a little space for the social communication, soft skill parts of how AI will impact that. And it's got me thinking. So thank you. You got me thinking on whole new levels of, and I'm sure there'll be all kinds of books and articles partly about this very topic we're talking about today. I'd be shocked if there isn't a plethora of information.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big subject over the next few years as it starts taking hold. Anything else from you, Yoshi?
No, I think Tom, it's been a pleasure having you on. I think it's the first time you've actually touched into this side of AI, and you can see a lot of the parallels between when it starts to build and develop real empathy and how that crosses a line with how humans show empathy at work and in their daily lives.
Yeah, that's a whole episode probably right there.
Well, we will have you back for sure.
Yes, Dean could do that one. You let me know. I'll connect you to Dean.
Yeah, please do. We love recommendations more than anything. Thank you so much, Tom. Until next week, everyone. See you later.
All right.
Project Flux is here.
That's a wrap for today's episode. But before you go, exciting news. Project Flux is teaming up with Project Management Global to bring you the latest in AI-driven project delivery and essential management insights. Through this partnership, expect weekly AI insights, practical tools, and expert thought leadership, ensuring you stay ahead in the evolving project landscape. Stay tuned for exclusive content, joint research, and strategies to supercharge your project outcomes. You can learn more at www.pm-global.co.uk and be part of the future of project management. See you later.
Project Flux is here.
Just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Construct AI. For anyone interested in looking at Construct AI, the link's in our show notes. There's a free tier that you can play around with. Yoshi and I have been using it for a good year since it was originally launched, and we get a huge amount of value out of it. So I thoroughly encourage everyone to go onto the Construct AI site and have a play around.
Cool. And guys, before we sign off, please don't forget to share, follow, and like all of our stuff. So that helps us to engage with you and understand a bit more about what you want so we can bring it to your doorstep as early as possible.
See you later, everyone.